second speaker, Rumen Cholakov. I will ask Rumen to stick to the 10-minute rule as well, please.
I will do my best. With your permission, I prefer to actually stand while giving the presentation, and I also need to launch my PowerPoint. The sun is actually in my favor today. Okay, so as said before, I will try and stick into the 10-minute time limit. I actually have a watch, especially for this purpose. And therefore, for the next 3 hours, I'm going to speak to you on the prisoners of war in Bulgaria during the First World War. Now, before I begin the actual presentation, I need to clarify what it is about. When I mean prisoners of war in Bulgaria, I mean foreign prisoners of war. So we mean British, French, Serbian, Romanian, Russian, Italian. Soldiers captured during the First World War, so 100 years ago, in Bulgaria's case a little bit less, because we joined in a bit later, in Bulgaria on the different fronts. It doesn't concern Bulgarians captured abroad. So this is just the introduction. I think the important question that every historian asks, and the most important sort of the historical question, is why? And I think starting this presentation, I think I need to address the question, why did I even think about doing prisoners of war? I mean, why did I choose to do this dissertation? I think this is the important starting point. One of the reasons is obviously that the field of looking at prisoners of war as a humanitarian issue has started to develop quite substantially in historiography in the Western Front and the Eastern Front, represented respectively by Alan Ibrahimov and Heather Jones at the LSE, according to Dr. Bimitov, who, however, have looked at the question in very different ways. So whereas Alan Ibrahimov sees it as sort of a continuation of a sort of 19th century Edwardian even mentality of fighting in captivity, Heather Jones has actually seen the First World War as the beginning of the horrors of the Second World War, the concentration camps, the terrors. So we can see some sort of initiation of that during the First World War. Secondly, well, there's nothing written on it. So I'm the only person who's ever really written any history on prisoners of war in Bulgaria in the First World War, so I've got another advantage of lying to you on any fact, so you can't really verify. But Elisabetta Dimitrova is one archivist in Velika Turnova who wrote a little bit, 2 short articles, but they're not quite historical, they're most of archival. And there are lots of archival materials in Velika Turnova. There are 60,000 pages. And most importantly, I got to travel quite a bit. So when I did the research in London, in Geneva, Paris, and in Plovdiv, which this is sort of increasing order of importance in my life. And of course, it's a humanitarian, the phenomenon is a major humanitarian crisis, and how it is being addressed is fascinating to see, but it's also quite representative of the Balkan mentality and the Balkan issues more broadly, and I'm going to build on Christian's issue of Serbia and Bulgaria and the mentality. But that doesn't mean that I'm giving any answers. I'm just giving my first encounter to the topic, which I did as an undergraduate, and this definitely has potential for a PhD project because of the vastness of the material. So I will probably, if someone else does it, this will probably all be wrong in a few years' time. Anyway, how many prisoners? I think the obvious question. Well, you can see there are different. This is a PhD project in itself. There were different, data. And most important, there's different data on it. But I think the most important issue here is that you've got 2 types of prisoners. You've got the soldiers and you've got the interned civilians. So everyone who was a foreign national in Bulgaria, all the British women, children, British American tobacco officials, etc., were interned during the war because they were foreign and were fighting against them. So they were put in camps or under surveillance. And the sources mainly focus on the soldiers, but I'm going to come back to why the interned civilians is important. And we can go with a number of 112,000 as an average for how many were actually interned, which is a vast number for Bulgaria, which at the time was sort of 7-8 million, if I'm correct. So it's a vast number for such a country. This is a sort of a map of where I think the camps were, but there is also a common. You don't go to the archives like, oh, you don't Google, so where are the camps in the First World War? It doesn't happen. So you have to go and try and establish where the camps are. And so this is sort of my basic idea of where they were. So basically the idea is that there are many camps. Biggest one was probably around 19,000 people, but importantly they didn't all live in the camp. Usually there were about 2,000 people. The Hague Convention, just very, very briefly, I don't want to talk a lot about law, but the reason why the issue is so confusing is because international legislation, the international treaties between powers when they began the war were very, very vague in what they wanted and what they required from different powers to treat each other. So the principle of reciprocity was very vague. So the only thing they said is that the prisoners must be treated humanely. Well, okay. And I've just pressed the button so that this is going to stop moving in a minute. Okay. But anyway, so what does it mean after? Okay. Can you just couldn't read and write, especially the foreign nationals as well. There are also translation issues I'll come back to. But this is sort of what the records they try to keep. One of the major issues of this dissertation is that the records are not very good. So that's why it's so difficult. And even at the time, they didn't know what's a prisoner of war, and there were lots of issues there, especially with numbers. So this is sort of to give you an idea of how many people were actually involved in administering the process. So for 112,000 prisoners, you had 35 people working in the government department in Sofia somewhere, which basically meant there were also 11 of them only could speak a foreign language. So you have something like, I don't know, someone who could speak a foreign language for every 10,000 prisoners. So imagine even writing out the names of these people is just an impossible task. And that's why a lot of the problems come with the resources. Plovdiv was a so-called propaganda camp. So is there anyone here from Plovdiv? Excellent. So Plovdiv was the best camp. They treated them in the nicest way. They were the nicest people and everything. So the propaganda camp was coined by the historian Gerald H. Davis on the Eastern Front. So the powers had this one camp where everything was perfect. So everyone who asked how the prisoners treated was taken to Plovdiv. And they were not taken anywhere else on all of these locations that I showed you. They were all taken to Plovdiv, and everything there was sort of good. It was frequently visited by the American legation, by the Chargé d'Affaires of the United States of America. And the inspection of the other camps, when actually did happen once during the 4 years, was, I think, quite interesting the way that the government, this is a government correspondence, that the prisoners of war, the directive that was given to the camps was that there must be an immediate improvement in their food compartments and their life in general, so they have neither occasion nor reason to formulate any complaints about their conditions when the foreign legation comes. So this is sort of like, yes, the foreigners are coming, we need to fix everything, we need to draw the curtains, That's what happened in all the other camps. This is just an example of Plovdiv, what the barracks look like, and these are officer barracks, they're also soldier barracks. So there's a completely different treatment. One of the major analytical points of this is that the officers were treated in a completely different way from the actual soldiers. So they lived 2-3 per room, they could go out, they could spend a lot of, a relatively large amount of money, depending on their rank. Whereas the soldiers were could be hundreds in a room, sleeping together. So this is a masonry house in Sofia, in the Sofia camp for British POWs. So all of the Plovdiv camp was only for British prisoners of war, and all of them were concentrated there, and for French prisoners of war. Initially,